Welcome everyone to the Frosty Canucks podcast. I'm your host, Jason, along with Steve.
You eat a star drop and the aroma reminds you of your favorite thing, titties.
Alright then. I had seen your post on Twitter, but I still didn't think that's what you were going to say.
I realize now that there's a missed opportunity there. I should have put dem titties instead of just titties. I feel like that would have been funnier. Oh well.
I don't know, you can play it again.
No, I don't want to. I'm like almost at the end of year one. I'm not going to start over.
Fair enough.
Well, that doesn't give us a lot to bounce off of.
No.
What even are we discussing this week? I know Nico had a question, but I don't know if there's anything in general you wanted to talk about.
The oldest piece of news was after a recording of the last episode, Sora was announced in Smash.
That's true. I was technically right when I said the next character would be a sword character. I know I jokingly said a gun character because I'm like, maybe Doom Guy was what I was thinking, but there's a Doom Guy me costume, so...
That was as close as you were going to get.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen people say that Sora doesn't play as much like a conventional sword character. I don't know anything about his moves. If he's got a fucking counterattack and he's got a bunch of disjoint normals, then I would say he's about as sword character as sword characters get.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know he's got the magic and stuff like that, like Blizzaga.
Okay, that's a little bit more interesting than
he's a bit more varied, but I wish I was a fly on the wall during that meeting with Nintendo, Disney, and Square Enix. Just like, we want Sora. Could we also have Goofy and Donald? No, says Disney.
Yeah, like Square Enix already has they had Cloud and Sephiroth
and the hero.
Yeah,
from Dragon Quest.
So Square is already totally on ball with stuff like this. Disney would be the real pain in the ass.
That's the part I'd be most interested in figuring out, like, what was said behind closed doors.
Yeah, and I don't think that Nintendo has any past dealings. I might be wrong about that, but I don't think they've had any really big past dealings with Disney before.
I don't believe so.
Their movie stuff is with Illumination, and their theme park they did was in combination with park people. I don't know which, but
Universal maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking Universal, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But if you thought that as well, that means that's probably what it is. It would have been very interesting to see what that meeting went like, because you have two companies, fundamentally, that are extremely protective about their intellectual property, trying to hash out if and how the intellectual property of one of them is going to appear in the other one's game. Because Nintendo, I assume in a lot of the meetings they have when they kind of give up the reins to some of their characters, I assume that they're very... there's certain issues they're not willing to budge on. For example, with Mario Rabbids Battle Kingdom, Mario is the main character in that, and he's always the main character in that. I assume that is because Nintendo is like, no, Mario is always the party leader. He's not allowed to not be the party leader.
Yeah, I mean, like, that project was closely monitored by Nintendo, even though it was developed by Ubisoft.
Precisely. And then I feel like there's other times where Nintendo has also been very heavy-handed with stuff. Metroid Prime, way back in the day. I don't know if it was before they owned Retro, but they were so displeased with how things were going that they brought Miyamoto in for a couple weeks to work on the project with them, and that kind of like got them pointed in what was a direction that Nintendo was a lot more pleased with. There's like a few things that I think Miyamoto fixed gameplay-wise, like the transition from first person into the morph ball. That was like one of the things I think that he was very like, it has to feel good. Otherwise, the way they implemented it was like too awkward.
That's still crazy to be like, you have to be that one guy who knows.
Oh, yeah. So that's one of the funny, just I guess, big side tangent. There's so much that Miyamoto knows about game design with regard to just like, how do you make a game feel good to play? Because like Nintendo is the poster child for there's no story in these games. So the games have to play well, right? And it's like, it's so crazy where it's like, there's like a ton of things that just this one person just has learned and intuitively knows and maybe doesn't exactly know how to communicate to other people, because it's like there's so many like really fuzzy concepts there, which makes studying some of Nintendo's work that Miyamoto's had at least some part in very interesting. They also drive him to work in like a bulletproof limousine. They're like afraid of it if he gets like mugged or something on the streets.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, it's like what he said. There's one person that the company is so critically revolves around.
Yeah, I mean, he is essentially a celebrity.
Yeah, interesting to see if he's been able to kind of pass on some of what he's learned to other people at Nintendo. I feel like they've been trying to give like the lead roles to other people for different projects now. So it'll be interesting to see what it's like in a Nintendo that doesn't have Miyamoto at all. Might end up having an era of Nintendo that looks very different 20 years from now, just by virtue of the fact that it's not all being kind of, at least in some way, directed by one person.
Well, I mean, we've seen that with the new games that have come out, like Splatoon and stuff.
Yeah,
like
Splatoon is, I would say, very much
the
like
prime
a
example.
is more influenced by people who are new. Movement in that still feels like very on brand for like common Nintendo, and that might be something that they continue to do. But yeah, it's very unconventional compared to like Nintendo from 20, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and yeah, it was Universal Studios Japan that made Super Nintendo World.
which I think opened at some point this year, even though COVID.
February 4th, annual pass holders only. March 18th, grand opening.
There you go.
I know that there's supposed to be like a Donkey Kong expansion that they're building onto that.
I'm not a theme park person. I can't in a million years think of why anyone would go to a theme park that's based on a video game.
I've seen some stuff on it. It's pretty interesting, like how you'll have like this wristband and you'll like punch the block, and then on the wristband something will change, or it'll like respond to being in close proximity. Like if you punch the block and stuff like that. They've made it a lot more interactive. Problem being COVID, I don't really want to touch where other people have interacted, so...
Yeah, no kidding.
Kind of shitty time to have revealed the park.
Well, I mean, it's been in the work for however long, right? It's like one of those things where it's like, if it's done and it's just sitting there, you're losing money on it if it's not open.
Want to go with...
I mean, we can just go into Nico's question.
Yeah.
So after our last episode where we finally get to talk about China, at least in brief, Nico had a follow-up question. Thank you for asking the question, Nico. And Nico's question is, for years, we've seen the movie industry not so subtly change or cater to the Chinese market, and worryingly, the CCP values, that aren't as tolerant as Western ones. Example, same-sex relationships. Question, in light of that, is China's crackdown on video games a blessing in disguise for Western gamers?
Very good question.
Did you want to start with this, or?
I mean, we're not going to have an immediate change because like a lot of these projects are on the go, so if there might be a shift maybe like 3-4 years down the line for maybe more of the AAA mindset, which is probably the companies that are aiming for China anyway. I guess it'll be a good thing, maybe. I don't know. They might just more market to other countries that are not going to potentially pick up this same restriction policy on how long someone can play a video game for.
So I'm going to stop you there to interject a thought here. I don't actually think this will have any effect from like Western developer perspectives, but I think it'll have a huge impact from Chinese developers' perspective. There are people who develop games in China who just lost a bunch of their core audience in their domestic market. I think the opposite, actually. Nico's question was more about, like, are we going to see Western games warped to suit the Chinese ideals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need Western games that have been warped to suit the Chinese ideals when you have Chinese games coming straight out of China from Chinese developers who are just going to maybe do that in general anyway?
I mean, we were already seeing some games come out from China more frequently.
Yeah, and I think that's going to become even more aggressive because they just lost their entire domestic, well, not their entire domestic market, but like the lion's share of their domestic market. Contrary to maybe what some people who are older want to hear, video games are overwhelmingly marketed towards and played by people who are younger. Mm-hmm. So when the 18 and under demographic is basically a dead zone to you, yeah, you're going to start advertising like hell to the Western audience because they don't give a fuck. They don't have these same dumbass restrictions. We may not necessarily see Western developers trying to cater their games for a Chinese-specific audience, but I think we're going to see more Chinese-influenced games, but they're just going to come directly from China because they have the developers are having a huge incentive to do well internationally because domestically there's not a huge market for them anymore.
Right, but I'm also thinking, like, as Mads has pointed out before, with the whole push for Sony going on PC.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if that kind of derails the plans or if it'll continue going. I know I saw, I think it was today, a PlayStation PC.
Yeah, they rebranded PlayStation Mobile to PlayStation PC. But like, even in light of this news, Sony's still barreling forward. They don't care.
Well, I mean, they've already put it so much time and effort into it, then this gets announced.
We're not pulling out now, boys.
Yeah, no kidding.
Heads down, rush forward. Brace for impact.
But to follow up on your point, maybe that's why we've been seeing more of Chinese single-player games cropping out, not just because the market's changed, so it's a lot easier to get your games onto, because it's changed from being, you gotta have a physical disc to, like, digital.
Yeah, digital is super duper level the playing field for smaller development teams. And for people who are developing in countries that are not as wealthy or don't have the same medium wealth as something like the United States of America or Canada or most of Europe.
Yeah, but I'm just interested if they saw the writing on the wall before.
You know what?
Like,
they
this
probably
was
did, and that might
that's
have
why
that might
we've
be
seen
why.
it in the
Yeah,
last 2 years.
they knew it was coming. Huh.
Because policy like that takes a while to get through the door. If you got like smart people in your company that are like understanding what the trends are, you're gonna notice that, and then you're gonna be like, well, we gotta shift course drastically. Cancel the MOBA game. We gotta do like a single player S game or something that's multiplayer oriented that would cater to a Western or...
Although I feel like part of that might come from the fact that it's like, okay, well, Tencent and NetEase, two of the biggest companies in the entire world, why would we even bother trying to compete with them? Let's just release a single-player game so we can just compete with... That might actually be more what the thought process is. It's like, okay, well, we can't compete with, like,
now they
two of the literal richest companies on the planet, so let's, we'll make a single-player game instead. That way we can compete in a market that we're not going to just get drowned out in.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what will come from this. Obviously, we won't know what was going to have happened, but
like I said before, I don't think there'll be much of a change. I don't think there was going to be much of a change. Video games are already, like, by and large, I would say, not as politically charged when it comes to their content as movies are, and like especially recently, it's become like a very mainstream vogue with movies to just put in a bunch of... I'm going to call it pandering because I think it is pandering because that's just what the climate is right now, where there's certain choices that filmmakers are making, not because it was an artistic decision.
Yeah.
It's specifically because this is what's popular and this is what will sell, which is why it's like, oh, hey, let's take this idea that's already been done and let's do it with women. It's like, okay, what's different about it? It's like, well, it's got women in it. It's like, okay, that's...
Batwoman.
All right. I know some people might give me hell for that, but it's like, just think about how much, like, why not make an entirely new premise or like...
Because ideas are hard.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, we're going to recycle an old idea and now we're going to put women in it because that's... And it'll be exactly the same, but with women. It's like, that feels to me like such condescending representation. Or it's the same as when they put in like token characters to check off certain, backgrounds or sexualities or persuasions or lifestyles or whatever. Like, and it's especially telling in like Disney's movies. I think Disney's probably the most
king of it.
The worst example of this, right? Where they'll put in a character who's maybe could be read as being homosexual, and then they'll have like a scene where they get to have like a kiss or whatever, right? And in the cut of the movie that goes to China, that like one bit of the movie where the kiss happens is like completely cut out of the movie. And that's why they designed the movie where it's like, oh, here's like a very easy thing we can just edit out when we release this to markets where being gay is not like a thing, right? Like, if we want to release to China, then, we don't have to deal with their intolerance of same-sex relationships, as Nico pointed out, so...
I'm just remembering, like, seeing a video online one time that was like The Sopranos, but all of the swearing, bad stuff, like killing, all that's cut out, and it's like a 2-minute episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say 20. Yeah, that wouldn't be very long.
It's like, it's just mostly just cut to black and then credits. It was pretty funny.
But yeah, it's like, and really, there's a lot of, at least bigger budget movies that pander to specific audiences. They will. There's just this is what we released to the Western audience with, and then we cut out these things that are really easy for us to remove because we were going to, we put them in so they could be easy to remove, and now we're going to release it in places where people are not as open-minded, and these kind of things are not acceptable.
Censorship.
I don't even, it's not even that. I just don't view any of these actions as being genuine. They're just so disingenuous and they're so... Yeah, exactly. Whenever I see companies like Disney's probably my favorite company to just beat on for this, but like every time they try and do something that's like progressive, I always feel like it's very thinly, like it's like a fucking mask, right? Like it's just, we're doing it because it's popular, and if it wasn't popular they wouldn't bother. Like they don't give it, they just care about making money. They don't care about the representation. But it's like, okay, is it better the representation is there, or is it better that if it wasn't so like a thinly veiled bullshit, right? Like,
I'm sure Walt's in his grave.
Oh, he's probably rolling in his grave.
Rolling, yeah, exactly.
So I guess there's that. I don't feel like we see as much of that in video games. Generally speaking, I feel like when video games do take the chance to make or have like politics in them, usually it's integrated a lot better, or it's integrated so much that it's like you just can't remove it in such an easy way by editing out like a few scenes.
Well, I mean, Ubisoft always goes on the record and going, our Far Cry game is non-political, okay, guys? It's non-political. There's a political leader in it, but it's non-political. You just gotta kill him.
They're probably like the best example in the video game industry of that, where they put in things specifically to pander to people, but it's very weird to me that they have like these games that are very clearly politically charged in the way that they're designed and like their message behind them. Oh, you're taking on a dictator in a fucking country. I'm sure there is nothing political about this. What? Call of Duty is a game that is overtly political and most people don't ever talk about.
No kidding.
People who are outside of America notice it probably the most, and people who are inside America probably notice it the least. But those games are highly political. They're basically just like giant ads for joining the military and patriotism. That's political. That's politics. BioShock, all three of them, at least the first two, the entirety of those games is based on why objectivism is terrible philosophy.
I don't know anything about that, so.
I only loosely know about it. I played the games, and then I learned about this stuff later in a different number of different contexts, and then went back and looked at the game again and was like, oh yeah, if you know what you're looking for, there's political shit all over the place in this game. It's just that if you're not familiar with that philosophy, then you just kind of miss all of it.
Yeah, I wasn't really thinking about any of that when I was playing them.
Or if you're used to having like overly aggressive American patriotism shoved down your throat all the time, then you won't notice how aggressively patriotic the Call of Duty games are.
They are.
Like that's another example where people are like, "Oh, games aren't political." So there are a number of games that are political and that say something based on the creator's politics. It's just that if you agree with them, you're probably not going to notice it, and if you're just like so used to seeing them or like not familiar at all with what the political stuff is, then you might go completely over your head and you'll just miss it. But yeah, I feel like in general, they have it so tightly integrated where you just can't get rid of it because it's just so core to like what kind of experience that game is trying to deliver that it's just not, like this doesn't get altered out of the game. Or you have Ubisoft, who are just like the king of pandering to everyone.
They're also the king of belittling and hassling you now. I've added it into our little Discord.
Yeah, I saw that as well, where they email you, telling you that you haven't played their game enough. Yeah, that's aggressively shitty.
So, for anyone who doesn't know, Far Cry 6, if you picked it up, we're like, nah, I don't really like it all that much. Assuming you logged in with a Ubisoft account, because of course you have to have a Ubisoft account, they're going to email you and say, haha, you failed to defeat me, mwahaha. Because they're monitoring your progress. And obviously, if you play 3 hours, you're not likely going to have beaten the game, so...
How do we get people to play our games more? We'll just spam you with fucking annoying emails so that you come back to play the game more.
Play.
Like a fucking free-to-play game would. Yeah, that's aggressively shitty.
You've paid like $80 Canadian for this. Fucking hell.
But yeah, so I guess just to kind of cap off Nico's question, I don't think that we'll see a change from Western studios. I don't know if we would have seen a change anyway. I feel like in general, a lot of AAA games are even like very milquetoast and they don't have a lot to say anyway. Hard question for me to answer because I don't think that video games have much artistic merit. Some people would get very upset hearing that come out of my mouth, but it's just... Yeah, it's just, I can elaborate on that. Maybe not now is not the right time to do it, but personally, I don't think that a lot of video games have artistic merit. I think that things in them are art. I don't necessarily think they are art. But the one change I think we're going to see is one that isn't actually asked about in the question. And I think that's that we're going to see more Chinese-developed games released in a Western audience, and they're going to be advertised more aggressively to a Western audience because the home base ain't very accommodating right now.
Yeah, no. But I mean, the thing for me would be like, from the Western perspective, it'll definitely change in terms of like, well, is China a growing market? Probably not now. So whatever was maybe in the pipeline is going to be altered or changed.
Yeah, probably.
We just won't see those maybe effects.
It's one of those things where it's like, how, if a company pivots out of doing something and we're not aware of what they're doing, then it's like, how do we judge what has actually changed? Because we don't know what was planned and what they can,
to figure
right?
out how to get into the multiverse. What do we want to go on to next?
I don't have anything of particular interest. I mean, like, we can talk about how Nintendo's shithead online service
Yes, that. I forgot about that. I don't know how I forgot about that.
We were praising Nintendo earlier. We need to balance it out. Let's criticize them.
Yeah, that balanced the scales of Nintendo judgment.
But yeah, so some people have posted videos online of their experience with Nintendo Online using the new set of games that came out with the expansion pass, or whatever the hell it's called.
Yeah, it's the expansion pack for either the Genesis or the Nintendo 64. Mostly for the Nintendo 64.
Yeah, so this isn't a ubiquitous thing, but some people have shown videos where there's massive input delay on the ports.
Because of course.
Yeah, and some people are showing videos that show like Mario Kart 64 running online like complete donkey ass. It just think about like what the worst online experience, like it's just you're playing a fucking slideshow. Like that's what these videos are. I for one am not surprised. Everything that just went balls up. Typical Nintendo.
I was surprised about the damn price though. That was wild for me. I was like, I knew it was gonna go up, but I didn't think it was
Isn't
gonna
it like
go
$50?
up. It's $50 from $20.
Yeah,
that's American.
It wasn't worth 20, so I know some shitheads were defending this online.
I've seen them too, yeah.
Like, oh, but that's like not unreasonable because of all of these arbitrary whatever the fuck. And I'm like, it's unreasonable on the basis it shouldn't cost anything in the first place. Says the PC player who doesn't have to pay for online.
Yeah, this should just be sweetening the deal.
Yeah.
Especially since they haven't addressed the problems with the service. The fact that it's
kind of shit.
Kind of shit, yeah. Fuck's sake.
Just Nintendo is over here, like, they're using, like, Acid Jeeves, man. Like, yeah, not even Internet Explorer. Like, fucking loading up Netscape.
Oh, I haven't heard that in forever. Jesus.
I had to think about that for a second. I'm like, what's the oldest web browser I know of? Let's go with the original web browser, fucking Netscape. This became Firefox eventually. But yeah, fucking Jesus Christ. When it comes to... I don't want to word this without being a complete asshole.
Don't try.
When it comes to... Okay, sure, fine. When it comes to anything that involves, like, just not making games, Nintendo just doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. Honest to God, when it comes to, like, running their business, when it comes to their online, when it comes to how they distribute their fucking hardware, when it comes to the monetization models in some of their games, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. If people didn't revere them so much, they would have just fallen off the face. Well, I guess I can say that, but it's like they have cash stores that are, like, bigger than the fucking Bank of Japan, so they're not going anywhere for a while anyway. Like, they've got enough money that they can pivot into something else, but it's just crazy to me how, like...
They survived the Wii U.
The Wii U was nothing.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, the Wii U was nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Sony can survive a bad system again.
No,
Microsoft can. They can buy fucking Mixer and then kill it.
Microsoft, as a company, makes so much money that they could have a completely unprofitable console for like a decade, and they might consider shutting down their entire games division if that happened. But yeah, they can have a completely unprofitable service running for multiple years and just be like, no, this is okay. They took a loss on Mixer for what, like 5-6 years? Yeah, exactly. Like you saw that. Like with Mixer, I don't even know how long Mixer existed. Like they had that running unprofitable for the entire time they owned it. Let's see here. Mixer was launched in 2016, and they shut it down, what, last year? Or earlier this year?
Why do I feel like it was 2019?
Let's check. Nope, it was 2020.
Okay.
This service made no money for 4 years, and then they finally, after that, were like, nah, we're going to pull the plug. If Ninja couldn't make this profitable, fuck it, we give up. So,
no kidding.
Where Sony as a company doesn't make even remotely as much money as either of those two, like either Nintendo or Microsoft.
No, that's why they got like smaller acquisitions as of late. Mostly people that they've been working with for several years anyway.
And then when Microsoft bought Bethesda, everyone was salty and they're like, oh, they should buy Konami. And I'm like, I don't know for sure, but I think Konami might be worth more than Sony is. Yes, did we talk about this before?
We have talked about this. We talked about their side businesses and pachinko and all that stuff. Yeah. Konami as a games division, yeah, total shit show right now, obviously.
Yeah, but as a company.
Yeah.
I feel like I said that and then later looked it up and figured out I was wrong. But like, let's see here. How much is Konami worth? 262.8 billion in revenue in 2020, 31 billion yen in operating income, net income of 19.9 billion yen. That's all the numbers I'm getting from Wikipedia. All right, what about Sony? Because Sony's wider than PlayStation, obviously, but PlayStation, as a portion of their company, their games division does quite well. Their movie division's not doing bad either as of late. Let's see here.
Yeah, it helps with
Revenue,
Spider-Man.
22.56 trillion. Okay, yeah, fucking Sony makes way more money than Konami does. Never mind. I don't think Sony as like thing is like Sony's position in the gaming market. I don't think they have the want or the need to spend a bunch of money buying another fucking company up because they're trying to expand like their. I feel like they're spending a lot of money on their movies recently, and those have been quite successful. Their streaming platforms, I believe they bought out. I don't know if they bought out completely or if they bought an ownership, like a majority ownership, but it was for Crunchyroll and whatever the other big anime streaming service is. Yeah, they own fundamentally like the two biggest streaming services for anime. So like that's a huge thing for them. I know they have their music streaming service. Obviously the movies are doing quite well, games are doing quite well. I think their hardware stuff, so like TVs, rice cookers, there's other things, but those are the only two things I can think of off the top of my head. I think that's actually where they're doing the worst, which is hilarious because that's where they started. I think they were originally a rice cooker company like 100 fucking years ago.
Well, I mean, Nintendo made playing cards, so yeah.
Yeah, they've always been a toy company, right? And Sony started as like a hardware company and then became a game company as like an extension of that. Chive, stop trying to bite my arm, you little shit. They've just kind of like accumulated a bunch of other media-related businesses along the way, so...
Well, I mean, Sony got involved with gaming because it's Nintendo, and then Xbox/Microsoft got involved with gaming because of Sony.
It's funny how that works.
Because
Nintendo brought Sony in to make a disc drive add-on for the Nintendo 64, and then they scrapped it, and Sony was like, well, fuck you too! And then they turned it into its own device and just released it.
Yeah, that's funny.
I don't know the story of how Microsoft got started, though. I've never heard that one before.
I think it was mostly to do with the fact that Microsoft was like, hey, Sony's getting all that money. We want that money too. I think that was more or less what it was. We want a slice of that pie.
And Sega had just gotten the shit kicked out of them, so...
The Dreamcast, yeah.
Yeah, there was room in the market for someone else to infiltrate. And like one of the major players just fell off the face of the earth. It's like, ooh, there's space here. Let's go in and fill it.
No kidding.
So...
Gates decided that Microsoft needed to venture into the console gaming market to compete with Sony.
All right.
Now that we've been very political, let's get into the games we've been playing.
It's 3 and 3, but I kind of have a fourth. I just want to talk a little bit about Guilty Gear this week since I've talked about it for a couple weeks.
Yeah, we'll do the update.
The Guilty Gear update.
So yeah, you were telling me that there was an update to the game?
Oh, yeah. So it got its first major balance patch. With that, every character got buffed.
Yeah, you said that was really interesting and, like, uncommon.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Well, so, like, generally speaking, it's better to buff characters than it is to nerf characters because people feel losses twice as heavily as they feel buffs. So if you're going to do stuff to characters, generally it's better to add than to take away. Some of the characters received minor nerfs, but there was a bunch of universal changes that buffed every single character, and on top of that, almost every single character got additional buffs on top of that. I think there was only like 2 or 3 of the 17 characters in the game that didn't get direct buffs, but they benefited from the system changes. So like the character I played, Mei, she didn't get any direct buffs. She actually got nerfs, but she was buffed by the changes to the system like every character was. Most of the changes that were made to her were the same kind of changes that every character had. So like her most common combo starter special move had its damage prorate increased. So that just means that like combos that start off of that move will be weaker.
So you didn't feel punished?
No, like that change was applied to basically everyone. So like that was not a big, like it's like, okay, Mei lost her best combo starter, but so did, like, or they didn't lose it, but like it got its damage reduced, and so did everyone else. So whatever. And then like the universal changes made it so that there's new combos that did not exist before that exist now, and they are wacky as shit. There's also a bunch of new aerial stuff you can do, which is also really cool. It's more of what I expected when I first started the game, but it wasn't in the game, but now it is. Just because like anime fighters are usually known for having really wacky air shit, and now everyone can do really wacky air shit.
Oh boy.
And then they also increased like the disjoint on what was already like her best anti-air, so it's even better now. So that's cool. Because there's some things that she struggled with in the air, and they just buffed everyone's air stuff, so they just increased her ability to smack people out of the air, which I think is like okay, that's a good buff. And then because some people just suck donkey dick, they made Dolphin easier to hit. Everyone can hit it now with their neutral jab, which they couldn't before. Now everyone can, and I'm like, fucking, if you timed it properly, everyone could before. But yeah, just make it easier for everyone to hit it now, because fuck.
It's all that practice wasted?
No, not necessarily. It just means I need to actually, I can't oppress people with Dolphin anymore.
Mm.
Well, unless they're real shit, which I still find some people who are real shit, but that's neither here nor there.
And you're at rank what?
I'm on the 9th of 11 floors now.
Nice.
And not before I was going up to 9 and getting booted back down again. So I was really I was at 8, but I'd get, if I got on a hot streak, I'd go up to 9 and I'd get, get on a lost streak and I'd go back down to 8.
So you're 9 to 10 now?
No, I haven't broken into 10 at all. I win as much as I lose in 9. But I don't go back to... Well, when I start playing, the first few matches, I usually have enough losses where I get bumped down to 8. And then I completely demolish some people on the 8th floor. And then it bumps me back up to 9. And then I just stay there for the rest of the set.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's usually the first few games, my warm-up games, I'll get bumped down off of a lost streak. Because it only takes losing to 2 people in a row to get bumped down. And I'm like, oh, this is stupid. I think I win about as much, if maybe not a little bit more than I lose. There's a couple different things I've been trying to do in general, beat out a few things, and I'd say that I'm generally playing better. There are some times where I still drop certain things, and I think that's the biggest thing, where once I clean up the execution of certain combos that I'm doing, then that will be, I think, the big determining factor, because I'm already starting to do a lot more tricky mix-ups with May, instead of just relying on the same couple of things over and over again. I've been using a few other things to really fuck with people. Oh god, I love fucking with people in fighting games. It's so fun.
You're evil.
I really am, yeah. I haven't been using her forward kick. It's a command normal. It's an overhead. It's the only overhead she has that is not a jump move and not the universal overhead that everyone has. So it has the exact same startup frames as Neutral Dust. It takes 20 frames to start up, but it's got a much shorter range. Unlike where, with the Dust attack, I'll use it from pretty far away, and people can kind of be like, oh, this motherfucker's using it, gonna use an overhead. I have to just block high and I'll be fine. With this, I'm usually up close at people, so okay, they're probably gonna go for a low. So you get more of a true 50-50 high-low mix-up off of it. You can do that command normal, or you can do her sweep, which is crouching dust. Using that has been great because you get a true 50-50 off of it after a knockdown. For context, 50-50 is when you have two options that are equally valid and you could option select one or the other, and the opponent has to make a decision about whether to block high or to block low. Mm-hmm. If they choose wrong, they get hit. That's what 50-50 is. So there's that, but the properties of the move are so insane. One of the things I am seeing a lot on floor 9 is people are 100% willing to press throw on wake up. So the idea is when you knock someone on their ass, you time an attack so that the active frames will hit them at the first frame they can be hit at. And that forces them to block or to choose wrong and get hit. What happens though is because throwing in Strive is 2 startup frames, it's extremely fast. It's faster than every attack in the game. So if you are waking up and you don't think your opponent can time their melee attack properly, you press throw. And you'll throw them out of the attack if they don't time it properly. So if they attack too early, then they'll be in recovery, and you can throw them out of their recovery, which then puts them on their butt, and now you have advantage over them, right? Or if they use the move too late, and the active frames haven't started yet, you'll grab them before the active frames start. There's a lot of people who are willing to do that, because on the 9th floor, there's a ton of people who just do not time their meaties properly, which is fine enough. But because of that, I've been trying to get better at my wake-up or my Okizeme timing for stuff. One of the things that is nice about the forward kick that Mei has isn't just that it's an overhead. She's in the air when she does it, even though it starts from the ground. What does that mean? You can throw ground to ground and air to air. You cannot throw ground to air. So if my opponent goes to throw and I miss time forward kick, they get hit. They get counter hit, in fact, which is real bad. Because on counter hit, you have a few more frames to input your Roman cancel and still have it count as a red Roman cancel, which is great for starting up a huge corner combo, because that's usually where I'm using 6k. Or in general, 6k just makes it so that you're plus enough that you can start to bully them afterwards if you're not in the corner and you don't want to use a red Roman cancel. So I'll use 6k. If they go to fucking jab or throw, it'll whiff. And then I'll smack them with the foot, and then can immediately go into some other pressure because I'm plus on hit. I can't combo out of 6k, but I can immediately start to pressure them with some other stuff, and then that usually, they'll make a mistake somewhere in there, and then I can catch them for a full combo, carry them to the corner, and then beat the hell out of them. So yeah, I've had a lot of fun using this one move that I was not utilizing at all, which was a huge mistake. It's extremely useful. The one that I'm trying to get, it's very hard for me to hit, is close slash. It has like, I think 7 frames of startup, and it's only active for like 4 frames. So you have a very narrow window to actually hit it. Alternatively, I when I'm just like, I don't want to lose, so I'm just going to use something that I could use more reliably. I'll use neutral heavy slash, which has like fucking 12 or 15 active frames. As long as you get the move out fast enough, you have a huge window where you can hit the person. And if they press a button, you get to beat the hell out of them. And if they don't press a button, you can continue to apply pressure and hopefully mix them up. I've been having a lot of fun with just obviously continuing to play that. Learning more and utilizing more of May's moveset to just abuse people has been great because I like abusing people. There was one match in particular. I was playing someone on I think it was the 9th floor. Might have been one of the people on the 8th floor. I kept hitting this guy with a charged dust attack. It's like the dust attack is an overhead, but like the charged dust attack, afterwards you can launch the opponent into the air and you can do like a full combo on them for a lot of damage. Most people who are good do not fall for that because instead of like the 20 frame startup that the regular dust attack has, the charged one has 25 frames. So it's super reactable. It's very easy to react to. Mm-hmm. You have almost half a second to react to it. It's one that I usually only catch people by surprise with, but some people who are like especially not good, I'll hit them with it multiple times in a row. This particular player was very not good, so I hit him with it numerous times in a row.
You are evil.
Well, if it works, I'm going to keep doing it. I was up 2 games against him, and in the 3rd game, I took the first round off of yet another charged dust attack, and I'm like, good lord, I'm just going to use it at round start, because Maze is super duper long reaching. It outreaches like a lot of attacks, especially other dust attacks. So from the starting position at round start, if you move May forward like just the tiniest little bit and use her dust attack, it'll connect if the opponent hasn't moved at all. Or if the opponent moves a little bit forward, then it'll hit. So it's got like a very, very long range. So I'm like, I'm just going to use it on round start and see if I can catch my opponent pressing a button. Round starts, I press the button, do the charged dust attack. What does my opponent do? My opponent did a charged dust attack at round start as well. May's charged dust attack outranges everyone else in the game's charged dust attacks. Do you want to hazard a guess what happened during this interaction?
No.
So because of my opponent using a charged dust attack, their hitbox was moved forward far enough that May's charged dust attack hit. The tiny bit of a disjoint that it has meant that I won. So I launched my opponent into the air, began doing the combo, and then the magical red box came up that said, lost connection to host. So my fucking opponent rage quit after I hit him in round start with the fucking dust attack.
Yeah, I wasn't going to guess that. That's funny.
It was so fucking funny. It wasn't even like a good decision. It was just like, man, my opponent's like on such tilt. I'm like, I'm just going to press this button and see if it works. And it did. I'm like, good lord. That was fun. But yeah, getting into games that are not Strive, which has obviously consumed a bunch of my time. I have Game Pass, which I mentioned last week, and I've actually played some games I want to talk about from Game Pass. So I will start off with the game that I actually signed up for Game Pass for, which is Back 4 Blood.
Is it that Left 4 Dead-like game, right?
Yeah, well, it's Left 4 Dead and everything but name. It's even made by the same people.
Oh, yeah.
It's very mediocre. It's not very fun. And for a game that's built the way it is, that's kind of a problem.
You were saying to me that the progression was a little shit.
Oh, the progression's complete shit. So, I guess fundamentally, it's a 4-player co-op shooter. You run around shooting zombies, and it spawns in special zombies that you have to deal with throughout a thing, and you're doing mission objectives.
Are they like the same type of zombies that you'd find in Left 4 Dead, just not in name?
Yeah, they're called like Ridden or something, I think, in this. They're just fucking zombies. They could have just called them zombies. I don't know why they didn't call them zombies. So yeah, I really don't like the progression, as you noted. It feels like a free-to-play game, and it's not a free-to-play game. I mean, I'm playing it on Game Pass, so...
You got it for the price of $1, almost free.
Yeah.
Well, for 1 month.
You play missions, and then you get points, and then you spend points on these things that are called supply lines, which are basically just a tier of unlocks, and then you spend your points, you unlock some shit, and then that's it. It's just very tedious, and there's a lot of shit.
And these are cards, right?
So some of them are cards, some of them are emotes that you're never going to use, or really dumb-looking cosmetics that you're not going to see because it's a first-person game.
But your friends can.
Yeah, well, I don't give a fuck. So yeah, there's like a ton of just nebulous, useless cosmetic shit, and the stuff you're really interested in are cards. For some reason, this game features a deck building element. I don't understand why. Fundamentally, you pick up to 15 perks that you can bring along with you into a mission. And then as you play the mission, it'll give you like 5 of them to choose from, and then you can take one. And as you continue to play more missions throughout the campaign, or like the act you're playing, you take more cards and then you just keep stacking them. So it's like they could have just been perks, but they have decided that they're going to be cards and you're going to build a deck out of them. So they went very literal with things instead of just keeping it very abstract. I don't necessarily see the purpose of that, especially because the deck's not even randomized. You get the cards in the same order every single time.
I could see them being random. That would be annoying, because you'd be like, oh, I don't have the right set for this mission.
Yeah, or if you have like a particular card that your entire build is pinned around, then you want that first rather than at the end. I hate unlock systems like this. I didn't like them back when people, by and large, liked them. I genuinely think that it's completely unacceptable for an unlock system like this to be in a paid game. It's so tedious and boring. I hate it so much.
Do you find it's just the purpose of like the unlock system just to pad out the game, or?
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely just to pad out the game. It's to keep you playing the game for longer. And the ironic thing is, when games have systems like this in them, I don't want to play them. But when games don't feature systems like this, I will play them for really long times. Like, I played fucking...
Might be the minority in that.
Yeah, well, it's like Guilty Gear. I've put almost 100 hours into it. It doesn't have any fucking unlocks.
Could you imagine? May can now use her dolphin move.
Oh my god, that'd be so stupid. Holy shit. So that's why I don't like it. I like having access to the full breadth of options that I'm allowed to have. Or at least, like, if the game has, like, a skill tree, right? That's like, okay, I can at least look and be like, all right, how do I want to build my character? How do I want to optimize my build? This doesn't have that. I don't even know what is all available until I unlock it. And then I'm like, all right, I guess I'll use these cards now.
So how many of these supply lines?
I have no fucking idea.
Oh, you've not reached an end.
You can see 3 of them at a time, and they only unlock the next one after you finish the previous one. I have no idea how long these things are. The fact that whenever you do them, they have like 8 things each, and like half of them will be cards and half of them will be garbage. So it's like even worse. It's like it takes like 200-300 points to even finish one of these fucking things, and like half of the rewards in them are fucking garbage.
How many points do you get per mission?
I don't even know. It depends on how well your team does. If you complete the bonus objective, I don't know exactly all of what goes into it, but generally speaking, if we do well, usually around like 50 or 60. So it takes a couple of missions to get enough points to, finish the supply line. I find that the progression really distasteful. I don't think the deck system works really well at all. A lot of the bonuses are very shit. Fundamentally, it makes you stronger to deal with the fact that the game's going to keep making the enemy stronger throughout a run.
Is it like you have 1% increased accuracy?
Kind of like that. There's no accuracy increases because it's just, it's an aim and shoot game.
That's
but it's like, you do 15% more damage. You have 15 more health. Okay. You have 25 more stamina and you sprint 20% faster. Okay.
Gotcha.
There's a few cards that I've seen thus far. I think there's probably more of them, but there's a few cards that radically change things. So there's one that I have that I've been using, and it decreases your stamina regeneration rate by 75%. So that's a debuff. That's not a buff.
Yeah.
But you get plus 100 stamina. So the default stamina is 100. So you start off with 200 stamina when you use this. And every time you get a melee kill, you regain 10 stamina.
You can make some wacky builds then, but it's just buried under a lot of extra padding and shit.
Yeah, so like I got lucky. I found this card pretty quickly, and one of the characters already has like a higher stamina regeneration rate. So I was like, what if I build her for melee? And that actually works really well with that card. So I just run around beating the hell out of people with my bat. That's kind of where I'm at with this, where I'm like, I've played this game before, and it was better, and it was called Vermintide. The first, not the second. And I know a lot of people who have played Left 4 Dead who are playing this and are like, yeah, Left 4 Dead was better than this. I find the progression really off-putting. Obviously, I've just spent probably 5 minutes complaining about it. The actual gunplay is really good. There's 3 or 4 different guns of each type. Pistols, shotguns, SMIGs, AR and snipers and melee weapons. I think all of them feel really good. The animation, the sound design, the little bits of like screen shake that they have in them, it makes them feel really chunky and impactful. I like that a lot. In fact, that's something that kind of makes or breaks a shooting game for me. And generally speaking, I found all the weapons pretty satisfying to use. I'm not super big on, they have rarity tiers for the weapons. So you like start off with a white tier weapon and you can find like green, blue, like, you know, the standard Diablo loot tier, where they'll have increased stats, and there's also weapon mods you can install onto them, which also have the same, the white, green, blue, or I guess they all start at green, but the loot rarity tiers that will increase the gun's stats. This can lead to some very hilarious combinations. I had like a long-range sniper-style ending thing on the end of a shotgun, and I let the shotgun shoot like 60 meters, which was hilarious.
Are these big areas that you have to like play in?
There are spots where that sometimes comes in handy, but I think there's like a pretty good mix of like claustrophobic corridors and then like more wide open spaces. I played through at least a third of the campaign.
Is that where you're gonna end it off, or?
Probably. I originally picked up the game because Charlie asked if I wanted to be his fourth, because his girlfriend and her sister were really big Left 4 Dead fans, and they needed a fourth person. And Charlie was like, okay, I'll like find somebody. And he asked me if I was interested. And I'm like, sure, I'll play games with you.
And is the end result that everyone thought it was shit, so drop it?
Oh yeah, we played with them. We played with them like once, and they were both very unimpressed with what was on display in the game. And I asked Charlie if we were like, hey, are we done? And he's like, I don't know. Well, like maybe play with Thomas. But I'm like, okay, because I was just seeing if he wanted to, because he asked for like the next thing to do. He's like, you want to play the Monster Hunter Rise demo? And I'm like, sure. I played it on Switch, but I'll play it on PC, whatever, sure. I don't think he's super interested in playing it. I know I'm not, but it is what it is. I'll play it a couple more times with like Thomas because he seems to be enjoying it. So if you're at least on like the microphone talking and shooting the shit with somebody, it's like not as bad to play a multiplayer game even if it's only kind of like eh.
But you can say that about any multiplayer game.
Yeah, which is why I don't think this is very good. But if that's like the flavor of the month game that we're playing right now, then that's what we'll play. I don't envision us actually finishing the campaign. I'm sure as shit not going to go out of my way to do it on my own. But yeah, I don't know. I just like generally don't find it super satisfying to play. I think a big part of that actually stems from two things. So the mission design is already kind of repetitive in the first like third of the game. I feel like a lot of the mission objectives we've had have been very samey so far. For instance, I think we've played through like 2 or 3 missions now where there's these giant bulbous pink zombie sacks and you have to run up to them and shoot some glowy bits on them. And then after you shoot the glowy bits on them, then a horde of zombies comes after you and you do that a couple of times and then you move on to the next part of the map. That's a thing that I've seen a couple of times now. Just everything about the game. Just like the environment, you're in like some kind of like rural American setting for like the majority of the game thus far. So I feel like I'm just seeing a lot of the same scenery everywhere, which isn't exactly great. Wherein, like, I'm going to compare this to Vermintide, because I think Vermintide's a better game. In Vermintide, there's, like, some missions that are inside the city. Some missions are in the countryside. Some missions are in a forest. A couple of missions take place underground. Just in the terms of the settings, there was more variety there. Wherein it's just like, you're in rural America. And then you're in rural America again. And you're in rural America again. I'm like, can we just please walk through a fucking, like, a forest or a cave or something? Fuck. I feel like they did that specifically to recycle a bunch of the assets they made for the levels so that they had to put less work in. But that makes me kind of question why this game has a $60 USD price tag when an indie game that was like $30 had more variety in its levels and its objectives. And then the other thing that's really just not jiving with me too well is how the specials work. So as you do with games like this, you can't just have a horde of amorphous bullshit enemies charging at the players all the time. You have to throw out special enemies.
Excellent.
In Vermintide, each of them had a sound cue, and because of that, you knew when they were coming.
Like an individualized one, or just like
yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
like when the Packmaster was coming, you could hear a jingle from the fucking trinkets on his like little backpack thingy he was walking around with. And he made this like really like high-pitched weaselly sounding laugh as he was running around. You're like, oh shit, a Packmaster's coming. And you could like shout that out to the group because his whole thing was that he'd grab somebody and then drag them away. You don't want that to happen because that's something you do not want to deal with in a game where enemies can kill you in like 4 hits. Or you'd hear like the gutter runner, right? He's like an assassin who would jump on somebody and then start like cleaving them to death.
Oh my.
These are all enemies that are like, if you've played Left 4 Dead, you're like, oh yeah, this is like this from Left 4 Dead, right? I haven't played Left 4 Dead, so I'm not sure what the zombie version of these rat enemies is, right? But like, he had a particular call where he'd be like, it'd just like make this like shadowy, whispery sound, and you'd hear that a bunch, and you could see him, and then he'd be like, oh, and he'd like fucking like throw like a smoke bomb down like a ninja and then disappear. Those things will like only attack when they're like after they've been around for a certain amount of time. So they'll send out a couple of sound calls before they'll actually attack someone. So you always know that this really debilitating enemy is coming your way before you have to deal with it. There's just always these nice sound cues. So it's like in between all of these like crazy, like when you're ripping through hordes of enemies, you know if a special was lurking and you had to be wary of it and have somebody constantly maybe like not focused on cleaving through the horde and more like looking out so they could snipe the special unit so it didn't get anyone. Or you had these cues where it's like, okay, we all have collectively heard the cue. Let's run back, and then we can deal with this thing in another area or run forward and deal with it in an area that would be better to run. Like, you don't just get hit with them randomly. It's kind of what I'm saying. Like, you kind of know that they're coming, so you can plan and strategically think around them. And because of that, there's moments where like, oh shit, I know that one of them's around because I heard the sound cue. We have to be very alert for this because if this thing catches us, then that could potentially ruin this run. In Back 4 Blood, however, there is no sound cues for any things. The specials just kind of spawn, and they spawn at such a high frequency that I think if they did have sound cues, the game's audio would just be a giant fucking shit show. But it feels less like the special units are being added to add in like this extra tension into certain parts of the level, and more like they're just bullying the player with how easy they are to deal with and how frequently they spawn. We tried the game on like the medium difficulty, and I think in like the first 5 minutes in a level we encountered 10 or 20 of these things, like different special units. It's fucking stupid. Where in Vermintide, you'll encounter maybe like 3 or 4 specials, except for Storm Vermin. That's different. They spawn in groups. But like generally, you wouldn't find that many specials all at once. I just felt like the game was trying to be super oppressive all the time instead of create moments of legitimate tension. I don't feel like that factor of the game is implemented well. And I think generally speaking, people would say that it was done better in Left 4 Dead. That's the general consensus I've seen online. And I would say from my own experience, it was done better in both Vermintide games. It just keeps throwing shit at you to throw shit at you instead of to make the encounters or the different times you're going through the levels feel like dynamic and unique or have moments of tension and release. And that's just it. There's no tension and release because it constantly just keeps throwing shit at you. There's like never any time where you get to like catch your breath unless there's just like nothing happening, which does occasionally happen. There are moments where you just get like a complete breakaway, but normally it just feels like you're just being oppressed the entire time. I think the entire game is very, very mediocre. I don't think it's constructed very well. I think that Turtle Rock has done a better job in the past. I really don't like the progression system. It almost feels like it should be a microtransaction-y laden thing, but it's not, strangely. I think there's a lot of things that don't work about this game, and apparently people who are really big Left 4 Dead fans also don't think this game works very well, because I've seen a fair number of people who have sent some negative criticism toward this game, citing that it's not really what they wanted out of a Left 4 Dead 3.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like they have the same progression problem that they did with Evolve.
Yes, that's actually a really good comparison. It feels like a free-to-play game, and so did Evolve before it was a free-to-play game.
And this one doesn't come with microtransactions, you were telling me.
Not that I can see. If they're there, they're hidden, which I don't think they're there, because I'm pretty sure if they were there, they would have been more in my face. It did launch with Day 1 DLC. I don't know what is in the DLC, but that's there. People are not happy about that either.
Oh, they just plan on doing cosmetics only. Won't be pay to win. Okay.
No, but it is grind to unlock a bunch of shit.
Grind to win?
Not grind to win, but grind to unlock a bunch of shit, which I hate.
Oh no, it's an RPG.
Yeah.
Is that it for Back 4 Blood?
I think so. If you're enjoying the game, more power to you, but fuck, I don't...
It's been done better before, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I just can't get over, is that I've played an indie game developed by a much smaller team that I think is more better, not from a technical level, mind you. Technically, this game runs very well, but like from just a gameplay perspective, I've played a game that was designed better than this in the past, so...
Well, speaking of games that have played better in the past, this is my last update for A Lost Judgment. I don't know, there's so many things I just don't like about it. I already finished it. I have done most of the school stories, which is the component I was mostly skipping. So didn't have a whole lot to talk about on that. I really hate the progression of the school stories because you have to do certain club activities before you can unlock other ones. I wish it was just plain and simple. You just had all 9 of the club activities available. There's 10 in total, but the one club is basically a hub for you accessing the other ones. So you gotta start with the dancing one. And then once you get to the dancing one to a certain degree, you unlock the robotics one. And then the robotics one is literally the fucking one that unlocks pretty much everything else as far as I'm concerned. Because it does
what
like
the fuck? You had
the
to...
skateboarding one, the photography one.
Hold on, you gotta play minigames to unlock other minigames?
Yes.
What the fuck? Why?
Because story progression, this professor it's just basically Sherlock versus Moriarty. That's the comparison in the story. It's a really terrible system, how they've implemented it. I really hate it. Because the fucking casino, which I know where it fucking is in the goddamn, like, Yakuza Like a Dragon game. It's in the bathroom. Spoilers, if you won't even know what bathroom it is, screw it, not spoilers. But anyway,
yeah, that's such a fucking...
You
it's in the bathroom.
The casino,
which bathroom?
Yeah, exactly. You can't access the casino throughout the entire campaign. I was convinced it was a side story that was going to unlock it.
Wait, you unlock it from the children in the school?
You have to unlock it from the children in the fucking school. It's so stupid.
That's
it's so arbitrary.
That's so dumb.
It's not even like an interesting casino. It's not like they added a new minigame. It's just poker. And you gotta just beat the person. There's blackjack, but you don't have to play that one in there to finish the story.
Oh, okay.
The challenges in there's 3 of them. It's literally find the password for the bathroom casino. Find the student who's pretending to be an adult in the casino, because that's just stupid. And
wait, the adults couldn't tell?
her. It's a girl in a fucking mustached man costume. She just got the build of like a little man. That's why she's able to pass along. I don't care if there's spoilers for this. Don't play the school stories part. It's just kind of not fun. So yeah, you can't access the fucking casino for like most of the game. It was literally one of the last things I was able to find after I kept playing the robotics club, which I was hating.
Sorry, I know you mean beat her as in like beat her at poker, but for a second I thought you actually did like Yakuza style beat the shit out of this.
No.
But I'm like, wait a minute, this is Yakuza, you're not allowed to fight women in Yakuza.
You can't fight women in Yakuza. Curious, like, you have a gun, but I'm not gonna defend myself.
Yeah.
The women can choose if I live or die.
Sorry, side tangent. If anyone is struggling in a particular fight, in Like a Dragon.
In Chapter 14, hint, hint.
Yeah, in Chapter 14, to put the 2 women party members you can have into your party. Just do it. They'll carry you through that fight.
No, put them on the sidelines. You get hit more often if you have them in your party.
Only Ichiban does, and he has a skill that makes it so that he can die once and come back.
Yeah, but I didn't have that skill.
I did, because I looked up where it was in
I
the
never
skill
had
tree.
that skill the entire playthrough. I didn't get one-shotted by the final boss.
Stupid.
Let's not trigger that. Let's not trigger bad memories,
Stupid
though.
Fucking Yakuza Like a Dragon. Piece of shit.
But I like the characters in that game, Like a Dragon, way more than I like the characters in Judgment. Plain and simple. They're good characters. They're just not at the same level. Some of the minigames were better. There was a death bike race one. That one was kind of fun.
Is that like the go-karts?
No, you're on motorcycles.
Well, yeah, but...
kind of on motorcycles. You're ramming into a team the entire time. You're trying to make sure that they don't the leader doesn't get too far away, and then once you beat all the minions...
kind of like motors. Are you literally on bikes?
Yeah, you're on bikes.
So you're pedaling the entire time?
No, like motorized bikes.
Oh, okay.
One's like I'd say almost as electric scooter-like, kind of.
Oh, okay, it's like a moped.
Like the starting one, but then I think the rest are kind of more motorcycle-like.
Okay.
It's wacky because one team has like explosives, one team utilizes sound, so they're like throwing radios at you, and then they just explode into a burst of sound that I guess just has too much of high of a decibel level that you're just like, oh god, my ears, ow. So you spin out. It's goofy stuff. And then there's fucking gun one that this one is hilarious because it doesn't make any sense. The track isn't 100% straight, so somehow the bullets bend time and space and can curve around the track.
What was that movie with Angelina Jolie, the Curve the Bullet thing, or the Curve the Bullet meme came from?
I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know what I'm talking about?
No.
People who are...
I'm an old man now.
Hold on. I never saw this movie. I just remember the commercials. Curve the Bullet. The movie was called Wanted.
Okay.
There's a scene where the guy has to curve the bullet. He like shoots the gun while doing while flicking his wrist, and that curves the blade. It's so stupid.
What? That's absurd.
That's the level this film is on. It's like about superhuman assassins or some shit. It had Angelina Jolie and some... Oh, is that a young James McAvoy? It is a young James McAvoy. Okay, yeah, somebody who I had never heard of at the time, but I actually now know who James McAvoy is, because he's been in some more noteworthy stuff. But yeah, it's real stupid. Or at least the commercials made it seem real stupid. I haven't actually seen it. I don't know if I can trick Miranda into watching this with me.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, it's got Chris Pratt in it, my favorite chubby man-child.
Wait, really?
He's probably like a side character or something, I don't know.
Probably. He probably gets killed off. You're like, yes.
Hopefully.
Yes!
Yes! But yeah, that's how the bullets were curving. They watched that movie too.
I mean, that one's definitely the goofiest edition of the lot. My problem is it's quantity over quality.
Ah, yes.
Is my biggest dilemma. Like in most of the Yakuza games, there's like the one big game, mini game, or there's like two. In Yakuza 2, there's the Cabaret Club, and then there's Majima's Construction Company.
Jesus
Those
Christ.
are the two big ones. They're of a certain quality. And this is just, here's a variety of them, and I'm like, you didn't sit down and make really good ones.
You should make one really good one. Instead, you made, 9, 10 mediocre ones?
And some of them are just copy-paste mechanics. Like the Photography Club is literally taking photos and investigations because, like in the first game, there was a lot of them, and then in this one, there's not. It's very similar to the tailing stuff that I was mentioning last time, where it's like, they didn't really do that many in the main campaign, and lo and behold, it was shoved into the side content. Yeah. Same with this. So they realized what mechanics worked from the first and which ones were just kind of like, these are kind of shit. So unfortunately, they threw the shit mechanics into the side stuff. So it doesn't really make me want to do the side stuff, which is a big component of most of the Yakuza games. So...
yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, bit of a swing and miss. That's more or less the update. I don't even think the side stories are all that interesting. I honestly think the first Judgment game was better.
That is a shame. You seem to be in the minority. I've seen a lot of people online ranting and raving about this game, but I posted one negative article to the Yakuza subreddit and was unceremoniously downvoted, so... I feel like the people, or at least in the circles I see Yakuza stuff online, is just like you're only allowed to have positive opinions, and if you don't, you get deleted.
I don't know. This just wasn't as good as what I could have expected.
That's fair. That's unfortunate, though. I genuinely am not super jazzed about the fact that, like, the one... because you never buy fucking games on day one. Or almost never. And this is, like, the one game you bought at release, and it's like, you come away from it at the end of it being like, that was kind of shit.
It's average.
I guess not shit, but yeah, it's mediocre.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes almost worse than if a game is shit. In some ways.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure.
The game's so mediocre that you're sitting there like, oh god, it's like eating gray paste. It's not bad, it's just not good either.
I went on like media blackout on the game. I only watched like the opening, which doesn't really tell you much. It just shows a bunch of character models and... look, it's pretty. I didn't have really any expectations for this. So.
Aside from what you expected from based on your experience with the first game.
That's true.
And the entirety of the Yakuza series.
Yeah.
From which this spins off.
Anyway, what's your game?
So I'm going to talk about the other game I played on Game Pass, which was the only good game I've played on Game Pass. Yay, there was a good game on Game Pass.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so about... a year ago, I wrote an indie demo preview article thing based on some games I had played at one of the various different Steam demo festival, whatever the fucks. I don't remember all their names. They keep changing them. And it was called The Riftbreakers. And it was a game where you pilot a mech suit and you go around collecting resources. And then you build a base with those resources. And then you got to defend yourselves from waves of attacking enemies while you collect more resources. So it's a little bit tower defense. It's a little bit kind of survivally with the whole resource management and then base building stuff.
And I'm guessing based off of your initial saying, it blends them together well?
Oh, yes, it does. Normally, I think I said it a few episodes ago, even when like Ian was on with us, where I said like with a demo, you kind of want it to be like 10, 15 minutes long, and that's it. The demo for this is like a prologue to the story in the game. It takes an hour and a half to complete. I played through the entire demo and did not realize that an hour and a half had gone by. That's a really good sign.
Mm-hmm.
The full game, it took me about 25 hours to complete it. It only started to drag a bit toward the end when I was trying to find a couple of things for systems that I don't think are super well done. But generally speaking, I think the game has a really solid core. So, based on the prologue mission, I was expecting the game to be mission-based. It's not. You get dropped into a map at the beginning of the game, and you are there until the end of the game. So, the first attempt, I figured I was just doing tutorial-y type stuff at the beginning. I figured I was just going to get rid of my base. And then after playing the game for about 3 or 4 hours, I was like, when I had like a really shitty base, this is like set up all over the place, I was like,
Oops.
we're not going anywhere, are we? And the game's like, hey, you can build another base to collect resources at this outpost. And I'm like, oh, fuck. All right, let's start from the beginning and choose like a better starting spot. It's going to take me less time to start from the beginning and go through like the tutorial stuff again.
So any listener who's playing this or going to play this, learn from Steve's mistake.
Oh, yeah, just assume that you're building permanent outpost, or like, if you're not super thrilled with where you chose at the beginning, figure out, collect resources, and then fucking move. So you do have the ability throughout the game. There's a few different specialty resources that you can't really find in the main area, and then you have to build outposts for them. You'll go on a couple of different missions where you enter different maps, and there's a ton of different enemies running around in those. In most of the cases for those, you end up setting up maybe a tiny outpost, or you just run around doing mech-based combat to get to a specific objective or collect a certain number of resources, and then you fuck off to the next part of the mission until you eventually hit the map, which has the resources on it that you're looking for, and then you can build a more permanent outpost there to start mining them for your home base. By the time you're done, I think you will have, 5 bases you manage. You can set them all up to mine the 2 primary resources and then whatever specialty resources available in whatever particular region they happen to be set up in. Generally speaking, most of the game revolves around constantly, like, a really good progression system. So, the progression system in Back 4 Blood feels really tacked on and extremely out of place. In the Riftbreakers, you start off and you're like, okay, I need to start mining some of the basic resources, so I have the ability to build other things, right? So you start by setting up like a fucking little mining thing on a carbon deposit, and then maybe one on an iron deposit. You start getting carbon and iron, and you're like, okay, I need to speed up production, so maybe you'll build some supporting structures that will help you to speed up the amount of stuff you're digging up. And then you're like, okay, now I need to defend my stuff. So then you start building up walls and turrets so you can defend your stuff. And then when you start collecting some more resources, eventually you unlock the tech tree. And then it's like, okay, there's a lot of things I can unlock from this tech tree. What is the thing that is like the most immediately affecting that I need right now? So like a lot of the stuff in the tech tree will be straight upgrades that make certain buildings run more efficiently. All of those will be just straight upgrades, which is always good to unlock those, so your base runs more efficiently. So like a large part of the core gameplay loop in this is just like, I built one thing and that means I need this other thing. So then you like build that thing and you're like, okay, now I need this thing. So you're just like constantly doing things that feed into like your overarching goal of whatever the mission objective is. In this case, eventually you have to build a giant portal back to Earth, which involves collecting a shitload of resources. But there's all these like small micro goals you'll set up along the way where you're like, okay, I need more carbon. I'm going to set up a remote mining base for carbon. Now the enemies are starting to get stronger. I need to upgrade my defenses. Okay, let's upgrade our defenses. Oh, shit, that means I need to have more iron. Okay, I gotta go set up an iron. There's just like a lot of things you'll end up doing where you're just going from like one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing, solving a bunch of logistical problems. I'd almost low-key call this like a logistics game, kind of in the same vein as like Factorio or Satisfactory. You're just constantly accumulating resources and then using those resources to solve problems so you can collect more resources so you can solve new problems so you can that cycle just keeps going and going and going, and then eventually you achieve whatever your larger goals are and you're like, oh shit, I didn't even realize that 8 hours has gone by. So...
So is there a decent end game once you've accomplished the goal of getting back to Earth, or...
Oh, no, I opened the portal and I haven't played the game since. You can play survival maps, I just don't see the point.
Okay.
By the time I was done the campaign, I had unlocked, like, I want to say 80 to 90% of the tech tree. I know some people could probably really enjoy just continuing to accumulate resources and make their bases even more crazy. I'm not one of those people. I just enjoyed playing through the campaign and working towards each of my smaller goals, which fed into the bigger goals. And I think it's a big part of what makes the progression in this work, is that just everything feels like it feeds into your central objective. So you end up doing all of these things that are technically very tedious grinding, really, to collect resources or get new structures, but it feels like you're always just working toward whatever your central goal is, right? Or the smaller goals that will support that centralized goal. In a lot of ways, the progression in that, I feel like it works really, really well. It's a very compelling game to play. It understands exactly what type of experience it's going for. I think it delivers on it very, very, very effectively. There are a few low-key issues in the game. One is that it's a little buggy. I originally was using the ray tracing features on my GPU, and that caused the game to crash twice. When I turned them off, the game stopped crashing.
Yeah.
There's also I don't know if those two things are related, but once I stopped using the ray tracing, the game stopped crashing. So I was like, okay. The other thing is that there's a tree that's dedicated towards like studying the alien life on the planet and then building upgrades based on the alien life. Some of the creatures or fauna or flora that you're supposed to scan as part of unlocking the different nodes in that tree are really easy to find in some of the missions that you do leading up to the permanent outposts. But once you leave the missions, if you don't leave like an outpost behind, you can't go back to them. And most of the time I was like, I'm never going to have a reason to come back here. But yeah, there's a few nodes on the tree that I would spend a very, very, very long time looking for the creature so I could scan and unlock the node on the alien tech tree. And the creature never spawned in on the map that it was supposed to, the final map. So I was like, that feels like a bug. So that kind of grinded me down a bit. But like when I was really... And it's not like I needed the thing either. It would have been handy. I looked up what it was, and I was like, ooh, that's like a really unfortunate one to have missed out on. But I still finished like the majority, I finished the game without it. So I was like, okay, this isn't like the end of the world. Those two issues withstanding, I still think the game was pretty good. It's also missing like a few really weird, like, I would say comfort features.
Oh, quality of life.
Every time, like, a certain weather event is happening, either the mech suit or the main characters notes, like, oh, it's raining now. And I'm like, yeah, I can see that, dipshit.
Oh, so you can't turn that shit off?
I think you can, but it turns off all announcements. So it turns off, like, the dumb ones, and it turns off the ones that are actually important. Like, hey, our base is under attack, which is kind of important to know. Or like, hey, this certain disaster is happening in this area. And it's like, okay, that would be useful to know. But it's like, I don't need to know when it's raining. Like, if a tornado is hitting my base, sure, but like if it's raining, I don't care. It's raining, like whatever. I can see that.
Like, would you ever be in a cave or something that you wouldn't be able to tell that it was raining?
No,
or?
No.
Okay,
You can always tell when the weather changes.
All right.
Outside.
Trying to come up with a reason.
Unless it's one that actively damages you, then I would say don't bother sending out a thing. And in some cases, some of them damage you until you unlock certain upgrades, and like once you get those upgrades, it shouldn't. Oh, the sun in the desert is going to be too hot. It's like, well, I have solar ray protection on myself and all of the buildings because I researched in the tech tree. Why are you talking about it like it's a problem? It's not a problem anymore. Same with, like, the firestorms in the volcano area or the acid storms in the fucking acid region. I'm like, I have the tech tree unlocks to deal with this. It's not a problem anymore. Stop announcing it like it's a problem. I am prepared for this. I was prepared before I came here. I have a lot of research stations in my base. They also don't auto-upgrade the buildings to the highest tier you have unlocked when you're building them. And the game did not tell me what the shortcut was to do that. I was actually looking up something completely different and found a thread where someone was like, 5 tips for this game. The game doesn't tell you that it's really useful. It's like, hold down Alt so you can construct the highest tier of a building. And I'm like, son of a bitch, I wish I'd known that hours ago. So it's like building the buildings and then upgrading them individually is like takes the same amount of time as if you built 3 of that building. If you just hold down Alt and build it right away, like you get the upgraded version of it immediately and you don't have to waste like 10 minutes of time upgrading the fucking buildings.
Right.
It just takes like the 2.5 minutes to build the building or whatever the fuck. This also has the benefit of the wave-based attacks come at you based on the amount of stuff you build. Upgrading counts as building. So if you build an entire wall and then have to upgrade the entire wall to level 2 and then upgrade to level 3 again, that counts as like building like 100 fucking structures, which brings in a giant wave of enemies. Whereas if you just build the wall the once and get it level 3 right away, it's like, okay, I can actually like place defenses down before the enemies are coming to kill me.
No way.
That's kind of like a weird oversight, but that's something that could really be patched in. The announcements could be patched, like that could be fixed with a patch. The things not spawning in that one particular zone they should have spawned in, that can be fixed. So like all these issues can be addressed with patching in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like not as inclined to be like, oh yeah, this is like a fundamental problem that's built into this game's design. But yeah, generally speaking, I think the game is pretty fun. It just lacks like that little bit of extra polish that would make it like a really exceptional experience. I genuinely think that this game does a really good job of delivering on the experience that it's going for. And one of the cool things, I didn't realize that this was a logistics game. Before playing it, I assumed it was more of like a tower defense-y type game because, like I said, I played like the demo and I was like, oh, this will be like mission-based. It's like, not really. You're actually building permanent bases across several maps and managing resources across several maps towards your goal. Factorio and Satisfactory, these are two games that I looked at and was like, these don't really seem like they're for me because they're like very heavily based around like survival-y type mechanics of like resource collection and other things.
Mm-hmm.
In general, whenever I try to play survival games, I've always been like, I don't really like these that much. So for a while, I was always convinced like games that were more logistics driven were also not for me. Apparently, that's not the case. So I have a couple of new games that I could potentially look into playing that I didn't know that I might actually enjoy, that I didn't previously think I would enjoy, because I had written off like everything that even was survival adjacent, because I was like, well, I just hate this entire genre.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Genuinely happy I got to play this game. It's on Game Pass right now. It's on Steam. I think it's on Epic as well. Generally really fun if you enjoy that type of kind of like slow building yourself up over time. Like I said, it handles its progression really well. So you can just get like, you can sink hours into just working towards doing whatever it is you're doing and totally lose track of time. It's very, very compelling and very engaging. Highly recommend checking it out, though keep in mind there are a few things there where, like I said, it's lacking a bit of polish.
What the hell did I say I would played? Dusk Diver.
I don't know what that is. I've heard of it, but I can't recall what it is. My mind's eye.
It's a game. It's actually it's a Chinese developer, I believe.
Wanning Games. That sounds Chinese. It's got characters that I can't tell if that's kanji.
They're Asian characters, but they're not Japanese.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think they're kanji.
Anyway, it's an action adventure game that's basically just a button masher kind of brawler where you just got light attacks, heavy attacks, like Dynasty Warrior style, just with fewer enemies. It's fine. It's not a AAA game. It's listed at like half the price of a triple game anyway to start, so I wasn't expecting an insane amount. It is set in Taiwan, which I thought was interesting.
Taiwan #1.
God damn it, man.
You brought this upon yourself. This almost looks like a kind of a Bayonetta-y style. Oh no, never mind. Actually, there's not like a bajillion enemies on the screen. So I'm just watching the trailer on Steam.
Yeah, it's fine. It's probably got average reviews, I'm gonna guess anyway.
Very positive on Steam. 87%.
Better than I thought.
People call this like Yakuza and Dynasty. Yeah.
No, not really.
Little button mashing combat, explode the people.
I mean, it's just monsters you're fighting, which unfortunately there's not a huge variety of monsters, so that can get tedious.
Oh, okay.
They just get like reskinned a little bit. You know how like in Dragon Quest when like
No, I don't. I've literally never played a Dragon Quest game.
Final Fantasy.
Bad example. Another bad example.
Fuck.
Can you please use a game that we have both played? I've played a couple of RPGs. I've played Pokemon. God
damn it, that won't count.
No, that one actually has a variety of different characters in it.
You know how there's a lot of Pokemon that look like Pikachu?
Yes.
It's like that. There we go.
So in platforming games, when they recolor an enemy in the later parts of the games and make them have like one new attack and give them a different, give them better damage.
I don't play platforming games, that's why I didn't think about it.
God, I love how just fucking confused we sound right now.
I am. Let's move on to your next. I'm kidding. I don't know, the characters are fine. It is a bit on the clunkier side. Once you have, because there are light RPG elements in this, so you have a skill tree, got like HP attacks, improved dodge. I don't know for the life of me how to use items, even though I bought them in the store. I don't know if I missed the tutorial completely. I have to like look it up online, but you're able to get through the entire game without having to use items at all.
That's cool, but it's very confusing. That's like
it's very confusing.
How do I use the biscuit I bought at the shop? I don't need to heal, but if I wanted to heal, how the fuck do I do it?
So the game's set in like this city. It's real in real life. Oh, I'm gonna butcher this. Ending. That's probably not how you're supposed to
okay, how do you... Hold on. How do you spell it?
It's XIM ending.
XIM ending.
Xmending? It's not translated into English. It's only Japanese and Chinese in the game, so I never really get to hear it in English, so I really don't know. But you go into that city, there's a few things you can do. The most important is going to these shops and like these eateries and just buying the food that's really cheap. So the amount of money that you're given is almost absurd.
Shimanding. Apparently.
Oh, okay.
Is how you say that.
See it now.
Yeah, Shimanding is how you say that.
Yeah, well, I knew I was going to butcher that.
English doesn't use X's very often, and when it does, it's always just a shit show, so...
It's true.
Most of our words that start with X involve us saying X, so...
Yeah, X-ray.
Yeah, exactly. So it is what it is.
I think the overall character design are good. But yeah, the combat's fine. It's probably got a runtime of, say, 8 to 10 hours, so it's...
That's pretty good.
Nice
okay length
short.
for
it's pretty good,
an action game, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's the right length. I'll be honest, I don't have a whole lot to talk about because I've been playing the game called Pac-Man, except that one's got a K because I have to move. So I'm kind of light on games that I'd rather be talking about because my whole plan of what I was going to play while I was on break has kind of been destroyed. So...
Yeah, I know why. I'm not going to say why, but I know why. It is what it is. Whatever.
Yes. Anywho, what's yours? Next one.
So the final one is Stardew Valley. I played Stardew Valley for the first time in 2017, apparently. So it's been, 4 years?
4 years.
Since I last played it. But yeah, I also felt kind of like I wanted to get in, like something similar to Riftbreakers, but I didn't have any interest in like continuing to play Riftbreakers in like a survival mode capacity. Same kind of progression in Stardew. Everything you do in small ways folds into your other larger goals, and then over time you achieve those larger goals. So
you heard about his new game?
The chocolatier thing? Yeah. I follow Concerned Ape on Twitter specifically to tell Miranda about when new Stardew patches are coming out, and /Sora to tell her about this game. That's the kind of boyfriend I am. I follow developers on Twitter who my girlfriend is interested, or like Subnautica. I was following them until they released Sub-Zero.
That immediately got yoink.
Yeah, well, I knew when the release date was happening because they announced it on Twitter, and I'm like, hey, they're releasing Sub-Zero on like this day, and she's like, oh my god, yay! So, but yeah, because Miranda has been playing Stardew. I'm kind of aware from listening to her talk about Stardew of like some of the stuff that's in the game that I have never seen before. But as I'm playing through the game now, I'm like, god damn, there's like so much. I haven't seen as much of it, but as I'm starting to get to like toward the end of the first year, there's like a couple of different things, like not insignificant things that are different. They have larger quests that come in the form of like a larger quest board.
Yeah. You get to choose from 2 of them, yeah.
Yeah, and there's like new buildings that Robin can build for your farm, like a fishery. There's a ton of new fish. I've caught a few of them, and I'm like, damn, I remember this thing.
Yeah, there's lots of new stuff to build. Or craft.
I haven't found as many of the crafting things, but there's like a ton of decorative recipes that didn't exist before, and decoration items that didn't exist before that are now in the game. I feel like they rebalanced how some of the friendship-related stuff works, and I think they gave them more dialogue, because the dialogue seems to change a little more often. It's not on the level where someone like like our friend Ian from Adventure Rules, where he would be satisfied with it, where it changes with Hades where it changes all the time.
Mm.
But it's changing more often, so I'm like, oh, hey, that's something that the character did. Like, they're not just repeating themselves as I have to talk to them every day, because if you don't, their friendship decays. I don't end up talking to everyone every day, but I talk to them enough that their friendship goes net up over time. But, yeah, and then there's, like, some things where I'm like, I don't know how to do this, and then Miranda, like, I don't even have to, like, look it up. I just go to Miranda, and I'm like, what is this? And she's like, this is this. And I'm like, all right. Or, like, I fucking messed up planting the jewel fruit that happens in fall, where it has to take the entire season to grow, and I'm like, I missed it on the first day. And I'm like, no! I'm going to lose out on the star drop until I get the greenhouse, and then I don't have to worry about the seasons. And she's like, what day is it? I'm like, it's just the second day. I fucked up the first day. And she's like, oh, just like plant it with the speed grower fertilizer, and then it'll come out like 2 or 3 days before the end of the month. And I'm like, how do you know to, like, do these things? Like, the amount of knowledge
through the problems, the same.
Yeah, well, yeah. She's just like, she's played this, and, like, this is another thing. Because we share computers, our cloud saves are the same, so, like, she has, like, 9 different save files. So you see, like, my character's save file at the very bottom, and then there's, like, 9 of her save files, and now there's, like, 1 more of my save files. And that doesn't account for, like, she bought the game on the Switch so that she could play it on the Switch when I'm using the computer on the weekends.
Oh,
so, like, she's easily played this game for, like, 500-600 hours, cumulatively between the 2 platforms, maybe more. You know how when I talk about Monster Hunter, and I'm like, oh yeah, you just do this, and then you do this, and you do this, because I've just done it so much. It's the same fucking thing with her, where she's just like, I just ask her a question. She's like, oh, this extremely specific thing is how you solve this extremely specific thing. And I'm like, all right, cool, thanks. So, like, I don't even need the fucking wiki. I'm dating the wiki. And then that's the other thing, is that because I'm actually playing this game again, and it's one that she is extremely familiar with. You know how, like, when you talk about games with your partner, and maybe they're not interested in the game, but they're, like, aware of the game, you can have kind of a conversation where you're leading most of the conversation, and the other person's passively listening or engaging. Kind of like what we're doing with the podcast, actually.
Yes.
With this, it's a little bit more involved. It's like when we had, like, the Yakuza episode, where both of us had been playing Yakuza, and then we had, like, a very detailed, in-depth conversation about it, where we both brought different points and perspectives and bounced off of each other quite a bit. Talking about Stardew now, because I'm playing it again with Miranda, is a lot like that. I like that instead of it being, like, me talking at her and her, like, listening and kind of, like, vaguely understanding a bunch of fighting game terminology I'm throwing out, which, by the way, because of how long I have spent playing fighting games over the last 3 years, she actually kind of knows what's going on whenever I'm watching fighting game streams. For Fantasy Strike, she can follow Fantasy Strike. I know she can follow Fantasy Strike.
Well, you said that's the beginner of the beginner games.
Yeah. Well, with, like, Guilty Gear, she's not as familiar with, like, what the fuck's going on with that. But, like, when I'm talking about stuff, she generally knows what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about notation, I said, like, forward kick earlier. Yeah, that's, like, 6K. So, like, 6 is, like, if you think about, like, a numpad, 6 would be, like...
I don't know what you mean.
Look at your keyboard. I'm going to explain this so our audience can... No, look at the keyboard, right? And look at the number side where it's got the 1, 2, 3, 4, like, for the calculator buttons. 5 is neutral, and then all the other ones are the directions. Because in every language, you'd have a different word for forward, down, back, up. You just use the numbers instead for notations, because numbers are universally understood by everyone on Earth. Yeah, that makes sense. So, like, if you want crouching something, it'd be 2, and then they have the buttons labeled with the first letter of their English names in most languages. So, like, punch is P. So, okay, you do a crouching punch, it'd be 2P.
2P or not to P?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, But that's, like, generally speaking how you do universal fighting game notation for a game, so that people who are in, like, you know, like someone who speaks an Asian language can write, like, a full guide and be like, these are the combos that you use. And then someone who's, like, speaks German, and someone who speaks English, and someone who speaks fucking Swedish, they can all, like, look at that and be like, oh yeah, I know what the combos are because this person, we wrote it in universal notation.
That is the best thing about math.
Yeah, exactly. Numbers are universal. So in a lot of fighting game stuff, they try to use numbers wherever possible to represent things so that everyone will know what the fuck is going on. But yeah, it's very nice having conversations with Miranda that are, like, more involved, or, like, she's like, have you found, like, thing XYZ yet? And I'm like, no, but I found this thing and I've never seen this before. And she's like, oh, that's cool. You can do so-and-so. When I was like, hey, I saw a fish pond. Like, I don't know what the fuck that is. And she's like, oh, this is what the fish pond is, and this is how it works. And I'm like, oh, neat. I had no idea. And she's like, yeah, you should build one of those as soon as you can because it's like really good to get started and it'll be like very profitable late game. And I'm like, all right, cool. There's like some side stories that I have never seen before because there's like some characters that you have to like go out of your way to see. So like, I never really interacted with the jock guy or the doctor guy or the writer guy before because I had to like go out of my way to do that in my previous playthrough. So I've been trying to like talk with them more. And I see their side stories, and I'm like, oh, this is like genuine. Like the writer guy when he's like, oh, I like moved out to the country to get away from the city so I could be inspired for my book, but I'm still having trouble. And I'm like, oh, that's related. I understand what that's like. Not for writing like a book, but just for like writing in general.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing these different side stories I haven't seen before has been genuinely. I don't know. I think all the little stories in Stardew were very well written, even though they're very simplistic. So I've been enjoying seeing the content that I'm not familiar with. And then I know there's like some other stuff, like the islands later in the game that I'll get to explore and fart around with. But
that's
a ways off. Yeah, I don't know. It's been nice to have something relaxing to play after 3 hours of just like palm sweaty, Guilty Gear, try hard shit. Like it's like you go from playing like the most intense game ever to go to playing like the most relaxed game. Except I'm trying to complete all the community fucking bundles and I'm like losing my goddamn mind trying to like figure out what I need to have and where I need to go and all this shit. Oh fuck.
You're not gonna do a Joja Cola run?
I didn't even know that was a thing. Yeah, so that's something that Miranda told me where I was like, I'm like complaining about the community center. She's like, you could have just gone the Joja route. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? She's like, yeah, you just like go into Joja Mart and then you money. Like buy the membership and then you give them money. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, you know how Lewis says to like, if one more person buys a Joja membership, I guess I'm just going to sell them the land for the community center to turn into a warehouse. And I'm like, yeah, I just figured that was like, you know, just like not, there was like a nothing dialogue. And she's like, no, that's a thing that can happen. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, no, it is.
And it's like, and then you just buy all the upgrades that you would normally get from the community center. And I'm like, that's so much easier. And she's like, yeah, the only thing that's keeping you from doing that is that it's the morally wrong thing to do. And I'm like, fuck that shit. If I'd known that was a thing at the beginning, I would have just gone with the money.
Yeah, King of Evil.
I'm too far into the fucking community center where I'm like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I've finished like a third of these fucking bundles now. I'm not quitting now. Like, fuck. If I'd known there was a route where I could have just maximized my money, fuck, I would have taken that in a heartbeat. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's like 18.7% did the Pelican Towns Community Center, and then 4.6% did the JoJo route.
I'm gonna assume that there's a 100% overlap between those two groups. There can be an
overlap, so.
Yeah, like they started a second save. I 100% think that the only people who would go for that run are people who are going for completion. I don't think a single person would legitimately go for that unless they were just going for like an achievement.
I know when my wife was playing this, I was just like, I'm going to do a JoJo run just to see how it's different so that you don't have to. She's like, it's so evil. And I'm like, okay, fine.
I am the king of evil.
Just giving
the king of evil, I'm the king of roguelikes.
Just giving the money, that's it. That's the game.
Yeah, well, that and it's like, JoJo's where you worked before you start at the farm. Like, it's like, it doesn't really make sense for your character to be like, yeah, I'll just, like, buy the membership to this corporation that I hated working for. That makes perfect sense.
I hate working at Walmart.
It's just like, I assume everyone who works at, like, an Amazon workshop refuses to buy anything from Amazon. So like, fuck this place.
I have seen so many goddamn ads for Amazon lately that are like, we have good working conditions, and I'm like, no you don't.
I'm sure that's not a lie.
Yeah, piss
fucking
on the
Christ.
ball.
Anyway, that's Stardew Valley. Or the return to Stardew Valley, I suppose.
Speaking of return of Monster Hunter World.
I got so excited when I saw that was on your list of games for this week.
Yeah, it just felt like something I was familiar with, just because my life at the moment has been kind of a bit chaotic, so...
Again, for the same reason that your plans didn't work out, we're not going to talk about it, but... Just for anyone listening, it's not a bad thing that happened, it's a good thing, it's just that it was unexpected.
It was very unexpected. It was a, trying to do this for the last 2 years, unexpected.
People are going to think it's a kid. It's not a kid.
It can be whatever your imagination is. Anyway, yeah.
Monster Hunter World, yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually playing it on the PS5 because I was curious how it would play.
You
It's
fucking
also
piece
one
of
of.
Never mind, just continue.
It's free. It was one of the
It was one of the PS Plus
collections.
games.
I didn't pay for it. That's why I downloaded it. Because I was looking through what were some of the games I'd want to download during my time off.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's very interesting playing that game because it only comes with the base one, so there's no clutch claw.
Wait, they don't have the clutch claw in the base game?
No, I can't access the clutch claw in the base game. I think that's actually something you can only use if you have Iceborne purchased. You can still use it in the base game, but you can't access it.
I did not realize that. I thought they just put it into the game, period.
I think that's supposed to be one of like the features that's like going to entice someone to go for Iceborne.
Yeah, but the
on
clutch claw
top of
sucks
the other
donkey
content.
balls. Is the Defender gear still in there?
Yes, that's still there. Some of
the fuck?
Some of the improvements that you were telling me about, like how the research base one, like the camp that you unlocked,
Yeah,
didn't
that's
have,
all
like,
there.
The smithy or whatever. That's perfectly fine. So all the improvements are there.
What
For the most part, it's
hell?
just the clutch claws missing. So it's been very interesting playing the game over again, not utilizing some of the strategies I had developed, which were around the clutch claw.
Yeah, well, I was going to
So
say, the clutch
it's
claw
kind
is
of also-
designed
Yeah.
to make it so that you could do really big damage to the more actively involved monsters in Iceborne.
Mm-hmm,
But it kind of fundamentally destroys the difficulty curve for the base game.
Yeah, so that's been interesting to re-experience over again, because it's like, okay, I can't use this mechanic anymore. So yeah, I've just been playing the way that people who had bought Monster Hunter World, like day one, would more or less
Yeah,
be
you were playing how I was playing before Iceborne came out. Are you playing the longsword again, or did you take the opportunity to play a different weapon?
was playing the longsword, and then I was like, I should switch to a different one. I switched to the hammer one, because I was curious how that one would play. I think it's classified like it's a little bit harder than or the difficulty levels a little harder than the rest.
I don't believe the in-game difficulty levels because they have the sword and shield listed as being one of the hardest weapons to play in the game, and that is definitively wrong.
Well, never mind. So yeah, it's been a bit more interesting playing that weapon. I think I'm gonna switch around a couple times just because I'm not having too much difficulty because I know how to play the base game.
Yeah, it's like if you know the monsters already, then learning new weapons is really easy, which is why, like, when I was in the end game, I learned how to play every single weapon.
Yeah, it's been fun. I'm playing around Halloween. So the base game has all the cutscenes with your handler in the Halloween costume, and it's so funny.
The big titty goth GF costume?
Yes. Her eyepiece is the flower, so in one of the cutscenes, she's just using the flower, and she's like, oh, I see, and I'm like, you're insane.
Yeah, when
It's really funny.
When I was playing through Iceborne, part of the story content was when I forget what the festival. It was like the New Year's festival, but during the New Year's festival, it had like an alien space theme. So she's running around in like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like you remember how in the '90s they envisioned the 2000s where everyone's running around in like steel reflective space clothing.
Well, remember 2015, we're supposed to have hover skateboards.
Yeah.
Hoverboards. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like that, kind of, but like more bluey than, yeah, it's really weird looking. But yeah, that's always the funniest thing is when you're a character and the handler just like dumb as shit. Or like there was one festival where she's wearing a fursuit. That's hilarious when that appears in cutscenes as well.
I didn't think they'd actually, because I understand your character and the Palico, the cat?
Palico,
sorry. Them being different all the time. I wasn't expecting the handler because when I played this the first time, I guess I played it off, not off during a holiday event. So that was kind of funny to see that because all of a sudden she just changed. I was like, what the hell? After the tutorial. But yeah, no, it's funny seeing them just be in those goofy costumes.
So have you actually finished the game this time? Because I don't think you got to the end of the campaign last time.
No, I only started this like 2 days ago, so.
Oh, okay. So how far are you?
I beat first round of Sora Magnaros. I think I did a few quests in there. I've gone down to
The Rotten Vale.
the Rotten Vale. Thank you. Yeah, Anyway, I wasn't really going to say a whole lot about Monster Hunter, so.
That's fine. I will maybe have more to query you. Because how far did you get when you were playing on PC? I forget.
Beat Zora Magnaros twice.
Okay. Did
Like
you do anything in high rank?
I think I did like 2 missions, and then I was like, I'm done for now.
Okay, so you
stuff.
just barely got to the part where the monsters actually start to clap back.
Yeah, I know.
Even then, like, once you get to the end of high rank, it's like, oh man, everything here's so easy. And then you have, like, fucking master rank, and then the monsters, even when you're in, like, end game gear, are like, oh yeah, we can still kill you in, like, 5 hits.
I know.
It's like, oh, fuck! What is defense scaling? But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what you think of some of the later game monsters, because some of them are complete dickheads, like Kushala. I got stuck on Nergigante for a really long time, and now Miranda says anytime I fight Nergigante, or even like the improved version that came with Iceborne, Miranda's like, you molest that monster. She's like, I feel bad for it because you brutalize it so bad. I can get through that fight, like, I think almost without getting hit. I don't do speedrunner times, but I'm not far off from speedrunner times for a solo run against Ruiner Nergigante.
Yeah.
Like, my best time, I think, was like 6 minutes and change. It's not speedrunner time, but that's not far off from some of the speedrunner times. It's one of those things where it's like the monsters that like I had the biggest problem with eventually became the ones that I learned so well that I just dance around them. It's crazy. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what your opinion is of after playing those. I feel like you'll not have as much of a problem as I did, strictly down to the fact that you played more games where observing and learning is a more critical part of not being a caveman. You're not a caveman. I am a caveman. So I feel
Dark
like
Souls, Bloodborne, all those games have trained me well.
Yeah. It took me a while to like learn how to play fighting games entirely because I'm just an unga bunga chimp-minded fool. So it'll be interesting to see how you get on with it.
Yeah, I plan to go a little bit farther than last time. I hope.
Finish it this time. Jesus Christ.
Anyway, that is our show. You can listen to this podcast on Anchor, Spotify,
Spoofy,
Stitcher, Apple, and on YouTube. You can follow this podcast at the Frosty Canucks on Twitter. You can follow myself at Javim Animation. I was planning on doing a bit more art this week. As I've said multiple times this episode, plans fell through. But that's where I go to post art and stuff like that.
You're getting a lot better at it, too.
I did finish one post. That's going to be up before this episode's out.
Cool.
What's your stuff, Steve?
You can follow me at FrostyLate on Twitter. That is the hub where everything goes. Links, shitposts, art, everything. If you just want to follow my art, you can go follow at FrostyLate on Instagram. Don't post there a whole lot because I don't do art a whole lot. But when I do art, it's on Instagram. You can read my blog at frostylate.ca. I post, or at least I try to post there, semi-regularly. This week, I put out an article about my time with Pokemon Unite and how people keep quitting early in that game, and it pisses me off.
Yes, the thing you mentioned last episode, yeah.
Yeah, I did. That article is actually manifested. It's actually out now.
Mm-hmm. It was a good read.
Thank you. Go read my blog. That's where most of my the stuff I spend a lot of time and effort goes. So I would appreciate having more people check that out. And that is it.
Thank you all for joining us this episode. And stay frosty.